ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. My brothers and sisters in Islam, the topic actually is dunya under an honest lens. This topic here, although it is a somewhat straightforward and seemingly unsophisticated topic, and that's certainly how it was with the eldest and earliest of generations. But what I have come to realize myself is that many times when this topic of dunya is addressed, there is a lot of confusion. Because you see, we have a hadith and ayat which speak in praise or aren't so critical of dunya. And we have a hadith and ayat which condemn and criticize and belittle dunya. And when we say dunya, we mean the worldly affairs. So as a result, many times people, they leave these lectures confused. And depending on which mindset or which focus was really zoomed in upon by the speaker, you have two different mindsets. You have either a group, an extreme perhaps, who don't want to do anything to do with dunya. They want to divorce from it totally. Perhaps their businesses they may sell even if it's in the halal. Perhaps their education, they may leave their education under the banner that they are minimalist, zuhad, and under the pretext that they want to do something full-time Islamic, maybe study Sharia or any other aspect. This is a group. And then we have another group who are so confused, and what they say is that I'm engaged in dunya. And my imara, my establishment of dunya, this is ibadah, this is worship. And you say, Akhi, where's your salah? Akhi, you're dealing with interest. My sister, where's your hijab? Brother, what's going on here? Where's the Quran? He says, Akhi, the Shaykh said, we got to establish the earth. And he said that working the earth, it is ibadah. So I am in a state of ibadah anyway. And then we have a third group who are genuinely confused. And they're like, I just don't know what to do. Am I supposed to divorce my wife, get rid of my husband? Education, is it bad? I mean, I don't want to upset Allah Ta'ala by dealing with this cursed dunya. But at the same time, I need to use it. I need to work. There are certain things which I require. Today, we want to focus on this aspect and perhaps come to a reconciliation between these narrations which outwardly curse the dunya and the ones which aren't so critical. So that we come up with this holistic and comprehensive understanding and put at ease this internal conflict which many of us are victim to when it comes to this sensitive topic of dunya. But first we can say with confidence, yes, there are ayat and there are hadith which are very critical of dunya and belittle dunya and deem it pathetic in the sight of Allah Ta'ala, the creator of dunya, without a doubt. And Allah Ta'ala sometimes in addressing this aspect, sometimes He uses the oceans as an analogy. Sometimes He uses food as an analogy. Sometimes He uses the sea as an analogy. Sometimes what He has given those who do not believe in Allah Ta'ala from the blessings of dunya as an analogy. And sometimes Allah Ta'ala uses rain as an analogy. Come with me with this last one for a moment. Allah Ta'ala says in some profound and beautiful and eloquent verses, He says, وَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا كَمَاءٍ أَنزَلْنَاهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. Give them, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, put forward the example of dunya. It is like rain. It is like rain. Ikhwan, wallahi, please focus on this example. My sisters, focus on this example, because now you have Allah Ta'ala, the creator of dunya, commentating on dunya. Because how many people, ikhwan, do you and I know who live on dunya, die on dunya, breathe on dunya, wake up for dunya, sleep on dunya? Their talents, abilities, skills, profession is invested in nothing but dunya. How many people do you know like this? They wake up in the morning, drink their coffee, put on their clothes, watch the news, go to work, check their email, come home, watch the program, go to sleep. Wake up the next morning, have their coffee, watch the news, and so on and so on. How many people do you know like this? Most. But ya ikhwan, what we want to say today is that this type of people, many of them, they may not enter the masjid maybe only once a week for Jumu'ah. Some of them perhaps they may only enter the masjid maybe once a year for Eid or Ramadan. And wallahi ya ikhwan and akhawat, I wouldn't be exaggerating to say that there is a group who wallahi do not enter the masjid only once in a lifetime, but not to pray, to be prayed upon. Before we continue with this ayah and this analogy, I want to give you just one quick narration. This is what is referred to by the ulama as the Isra'iliyat, one of the narrations from the books of the Christians or Jews. And our manhaj, our methodology with such narrations is that so long as they do not contradict the Quran and the authentic sunnah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, then there is no haraj, there is no problem in relating it for the sake of isti'nas. This narration, it mentions that Jesus alayhi salam was approached by a Jewish man and he said to him, I want to accompany you on your travels. He said to him, come with me. As they traveled, Jesus alayhi salam, he had with him 3 loaves of bread. Suddenly they became 2. So he says to the man, أين الرغيف الثالث? Where is the 3rd loaf of bread? He says to him, والله ما كان إلا 2. He says, I swear by Allah, there were only ever 2 loaves of bread. He didn't comment. And they continued walking until they reached a blind man. Isa alayhi salam, he places his hand on the face of this blind man and asks Allah Ta'ala to restore him his vision, and his vision comes back. The Jewish man, he says, Subhanallah, shocked. Jesus alayhi salam, he says, أسألك بحق من رد بصره إليه وعافاه أين الرغيف الثالث? I ask you, in the name of the one who restored him his vision, where is the 3rd loaf of bread? He said, there were only 2 loaves of bread. No use. They continued walking until they reached a river. And he said to him, كيف العبور? How are we going to cross this river? Isa alayhi salam said to him, قل بسم الله واتبعني. Say in the name of Allah, Bismillah, and just follow me. And La ilaha illallah, by the permission of Allah Ta'ala, there they are, walking on the surface of the water. Until they got to the other side, and this man, he said, Subhanallah, we just walked on water, Subhanallah. He says, أسألك بحق من سيرنا على الماء أين الرغيف الثالث? I ask you in the name of the one who gave us permission to walk on the sea, where is the 3rd loaf of bread? He said, no, there were only 2 loaves of bread. La ilaha illallah. Here, Isa alayhi salam, he makes 3 piles of soil. And then he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to convert them into gold. And this man is like, wow, mashallah, who do these 3 piles of gold belong to? He said, well, the first belongs to me. The second belongs to you. And he said, the third? He said, the third belongs to the one who ate the 3rd loaf of bread. He said, I ate the loaf of bread. That was me. Isa alayhi salam looks to him and says, كلهم لك. All of them belong to you, take them. Isa alayhi salam, he walks away. And you imagine, this guy is just amazing, man. What have I done in my life to deserve this? Meanwhile, 3 horsemen, they pass by. And they see gold, and they see one man guarding it. What do they do to the man? They finish him off. Subhanallah dunya, huh? They didn't even have a moment to enjoy his wealth. Subhanallah shaitan though, he comes in and instantly starts playing about with their minds. How are you going to get hold of all 3 to yourself? So one of them leans over to his friend and he says, Ya akhi, wouldn't it be great for us to have these last pile of gold, split it in half and have half a pile extra each? He said, you know what, that's a beautiful idea. Should we get rid of him? I think we get rid of him. They said to him, brother, what do you say if you go and get us some food? We're hungry just before we set off. He said, we'll do that. He went away to buy them some food. Shaitan, he comes to him. And he says, you know, it would be lovely to have those 3 piles of gold to myself. So what does he do? He poisons the food. Allahu Akbar. Romeo and Juliet, huh? Similar story. He comes back with the food, thinking, I've got these guys under control. They greet him with stabbings until he's dead. They sit down to eat the food. La ilaha illallah. And they're dead. Meanwhile, Isa alayhi salam, he walks back. And he sees 4 men lying dead on the floor and 3 heaps of gold untouched. And he says, هَكَذَا تَفْعَلُ الدُّنْيَا بِأَهْلِهَا. This is what dunya does to its people. Wallahi ya ikhwan, forgive me, but when one of us will finally and eventually find himself lying on a plank of wood being washed with lotus leaf and warm water so that they don't hurt your dead corpse. Wallahi ya ikhwan, even that gold tooth you may have in your mouth, that's going to be removed. And that's going to be split between your inheritors. Nothing is going to go underground with you except your hasanat and your sayyi'at. Allah Ta'ala, sometimes He uses what He has given the disbelievers of blessings as a sign of the worthlessness of this dunya. I want to give you ayat now, ikhwan, and focus with me. These ayat are so profound and so magnificent that wallahi ta'ala they will pull your heart out if you concentrate. Allah says in Surah Az-Zukhruf, وَلَوْلَا أَن يَكُونَ النَّاسُ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً لَجَعَلْنَا لِمَنْ يَكْفُرُ بِالرَّحْمَنِ لِبُيُوتِهِمْ سُقُفًا مِّن فِضَّةٍ وَمَعَارِجَ عَلَيْهَا يَظْهَرُونَ. He says, Allahu Akbar, if it wasn't that the whole world would become a single community of disbelievers, I would have given those who disbelieve in me homes which have roofs of silver and stairs ascending into their rooms made out of silver. And then he says, وَلِبُيُوتِهِمْ أَبْوَابًا وَسُرُرًا عَلَيْهَا يَتَّكِئُونَ. And I would have given them as well doors to their homes made out of silver, and thrones in their homes made out of silver. And then he says, وَزُخْرُفًا, and I would have given them adornments of gold. You know what Allah Ta'ala is saying? He's saying this dunya is so worthless in my sight, so insignificant and so unprecious, that if it wasn't for the fact that everyone would end up disbelieving in me, I would have given every disbeliever all of these things. As for the akhirah, it is only for the believers, but dunya is for the believers and disbelievers. And then Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَإِن كُلُّ ذَلِكَ لَمَّا مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Yet all of this, meaning those silver doors and silver roofs and silver thrones and silver beds and gold adornments, would have been nothing but the enjoyment of dunya. وَالْآخِرَةُ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. But the hereafter